I'm gonna introduce you to a collective research we've been conducting the last 5 years in Brazil, and we are still conducting in a more international perspective right now in a group with 11 ethnographers. We work in with contemporary issues. So I'm gonna introduce you to this kind of urban ethnography we did. As Natasha said in his great presentation, we had to go much further the beyond the urban borders to understand what was happening there. Second part of my presentation is exactly this journey of a stolen vehicle we followed. And third part is how this market chains related to what is happening in local places reproduce inequalities and violence. In our case, a lot of violence. So our research question was, how are São Paulo's inequalities and violence being reproduced within transnational illegal market chains? And this illegal and legal frame is because our illegal markets are completely entangled with legal and formal economy here. So we are trying to understand long-term processes and how it frames everyday life situations and mechanisms of reproduction of inequalities. I've been conducting myself field work in São Paulo for almost 20 years in the same neighborhood. And this collective research is a kind of continuation of this ethnographic research, but in a much broader collaborative network following the journeys of these stolen cars. So the car is stolen, and no one of us sit in a stolen car and go with the car, but we stop to do our ethnography where those stolen cars usually stopped. And our theoretical perspective is not that we have the good state and the bad crime and in these bipolar frames. You know, we are really thinking about urban conflict as power struggle. And we think that we have in Brazil, and especially in big cities in Brazil, different normative regimes coexisting. Okay, so the state is one of the power regimes that are trying to produce order in the country, but we have a lot of armed groups, and we have a lot of religious groups, and we have a lot of market groups that are always trying to coexist and ordering the spaces and the flow of those things, commodities, cars, people, etc. So I'm gonna, second part of my presentation, I'm gonna tell you an ethnographic story. I know this guy Samuel since he was 7 years old. No, 9 years old, sorry, 9 years old. In 2016, he had 18 years old, and he told me he stole a car. And that is the beginning of this story. I know his family for a long time. Samuel is the third generation of a half criminal, half worker family in Brazil. I mean, Ivete has 88 kids, and 4 of her kids became criminals. I mean, they work in criminal markets, especially theft market, but also drug market and other markets. Okay, and Samuel is the third generation. He is son of a very worker and religious girl who came these criminal activities. And Samuel told me that he stole a Toyota Hilux in 2016, and I found in YouTube a scene of theft that is exactly the same he described to me. Okay, so I'm gonna show you. It's 40 seconds scene. The Toyota Hilux come, and 4 guys in 2 motorbikes will come to steal this car, and they have a rented gun to steal this car. This is more or less, it's not more or less, it's exactly how he described it to me. 4 guys in 2 stolen motorbikes stealing a car that in Brazil is so expensive. It's $60,000 in Brazil. And you can see that they steal other objects, cell phones, wallet, etc., because sometimes they earn much more money with these small objects than with the car. Okay, so Samuel is paid to steal this car. He's not stealing for himself or for his friend. He is hired to steal. Okay, it's a market, and people hire young guys like him to steal cars and to deliver cars to someone who will make money with this. Samuel is hired by $250. What is a minimum wage in Brazil? If he works the whole month, 44 hours a day, 44 hours a week, he will earn $250. And now he earns in 30 seconds. Okay, so for him, it's a lot of money. But of course, the car costs $60,000, and he is earning 250. Okay. After the robbery, I went with Samuel and some of his friends to a shopping mall. It was the following day, the next day. We went there, and Samuel bought things that those guys love. I mean, Oakley sunglasses, and they had some food in Subway and McDonald's. Okay, I mean, this illegal money he earned the day before now is translated to global money. Okay, it paid taxes, because in Brazil we pay a lot of taxes in consumption. So it pays taxes. It goes to global money immediately. Those guys who are hired to steal in Brazil, they are not saving money. They are kind of places where money flows. They put those things in circulation, but for global markets. After this kind of robbery, we have in São Paulo 63% of police killings. The police use of lethal force in São Paulo is much related to theft repression. After this map shows police killed in São Paulo 2012. We had access to all the documentation, to all the cases, and we've been comparing the zone A, that is a very rich zone in São Paulo, to zone B, that is very poor. In zone A, we have a lot of non-violent thefts, and in zone B, we have a lot of violent robberies, like the one we've been watching. Okay, so we have very different ways of putting things in circulation, violent ways and non-violent ways, and the police, as you see, work in the border between richer and poorer areas. Okay, they are always controlling these borders. If we see in zone A, more than 2,000 vehicle thefts and 600 vehicle robberies. In zone B, more than 2,300 vehicle robberies. And if we see the taxes, the police kills twice more in rich zones. I mean, in relative terms, police tries to protect rich zones, and it's offensive in poorer zones. Okay, so in absolute numbers, police kills much more in zone B, but in relative numbers, it is in the rich part of the city. Insurance companies are not worried about the thieves. On the contrary of the police, the police goes to suppress the thieves, but the insurance companies are always worried about recovering the cars. And they do a lot of money recovering those cars and putting those cars in auctions like this. Okay, so the auctioneer earns 5% of the price of this car. So if Samuel earn $2,500, $250, this guy, the auctioneer, will earn 10 times more, $2,500. Okay, but the auctioneer sells 100, 140, 150 cars a day. So he earns a lot of money with stolen cars. This guy, we've been following this guy, the owner of this auction yard, and this guy became senator of the republic by a northern state in Brazil. He's from São Paulo, but he went to another state to become senator. And Samuel was shot 2 years after. Fortunately, he is alive. He's in the prison. He's incarcerated now. But those are the destinies of this profile of people who earns different money with stolen cars. If we see here one day of auction with a Hyundai HB20, we can see that the insurance company earns more than 900 minimum wage in a single day, while the thief earns half minimum wage. Okay, and here we try to compare how they live in the city, who are they and how they live in the city, and how are they exposed to violence, and who earns more are completely legal, even if they are gathering money from illegal markets, and who earns less and takes all the risk are completely exposed to violence. So the victims of homicide in Brazil last 40 years are more or less the same. The rates vary a lot, but the victims profile, the preferential profile is exactly the same. It's Samuel, okay? 94% are men, 72% are black in a population that has in São Paulo 40% of blacks. 71% are victims of gunfire, and 53% are very young guys. Okay, those guys are the young unskilled operators of transnational illegal economies living in São Paulo's favelas. Okay, that's why we have to go much further, much beyond the urban spaces to understand what is happening with them. And now I come to the third part of my presentation. These stolen car markets in Brazil are very violent. Okay, so we have 500,000 stolen vehicles in Brazil a day, and in São Paulo we have more or less the same. In 2016 we had 600,000 stolen cars in Europe. Interpol reports say that, and they are very worried about car theft in Europe. But in our case, half part of those thefts are violent, are robberies. Okay, So there's a lot of violence being produced in this market. This Toyota Hilux, normally, if it's not recovered, because half part is recovered, half part disappears of those stolen cars. This Toyota Hilux, it's normally trafficked to the Bolivian border or the Paraguayan border in Brazil. It's very common in many places in the world. In Western Europe, they traffic cars to Eastern Europe or to Africa. If we go to United States, they will traffic cars to Mexico, okay, in exchange of drugs and guns. So it's more or less the same here. We export cars, stolen cars, to Paraguay and Bolivia, and Paraguay and Bolivia exchange those cars, buy drugs and guns. So we went there to do field work in the Bolivian border, and one Hilux, more or less the same style, the same model, Samuel stole at that time, was exchanged by 5 kilos of hydrochloride cocaine, okay? And this cocaine is transported back to São Paulo and then to the ports. If we see those percent increases in the right column, we see that the far is the way where this cocaine is transported, the more people earn, okay? And if they change cocaine by cars, the price increase is much higher because, of course, the costs are much lower, okay? So these mobility chains also produce value and distribute this value very unequally. This is a new commerce in our country. I mean, it comes from 10 years ago, and it's 5 or 6 years ago that the main criminal groups in Brazil, PCC is a group that I studied for a long time, but this PCC, Primeiro Comando da Capital, this group reached and became hegemonic in big ports in Brazil in 2014. I mean, it's very recent. But when they arrived there and they could really export cocaine to all over the world, it changed a lot how things are going in many places of the world, because it is a lot of money. Okay, it's not money; it's a lot of money. Cocaine costs $1 in the Bolivian border, and it costs $100 in Europe. I mean, 80, 150, depends on the place, but it is a lot. Okay, it's 100 times more. So if we go to the Gorlitzer Park in Berlin, I've been conducting field research there very briefly, but it was very instructive for us. 1 gram of cocaine is $115 in the Gorlitzer Park. I mean, one Toyota Hilux that Samuel stole in São Paulo means $575,000 in retail, in cocaine sold in retail, okay? For Samuel, $250. For the auctioneer, $3,000. For the insurance company, almost $200,000. For the international wholesale dealers in Brazil, more than $100,000. And for the international retail dealers in Berlin, more than $400,000 with the single Toyota Hilux Samuel stole in São Paulo. I mean, violence and inequalities and markets and the regulation of those markets are completely entangled if we see things by these journeys, okay? And of course, those guys who are earning a lot of money dealing drugs, not the retail dealers only, but the guys who are behind them, of course. But they are, if the money they got now, the last years, of course, is converted in power to regulate urban life and power to reach some institutional positions as well. Okay, so I meant to be very empirical and now we have time to discuss those findings. I would like to thank very much Eder Oliveira, who is the artist who paints those incredible paintings, and to my team in the University of São Carlos, Campinas, and the SEBRAP, Débora From, Luana Mota, Janaína Maldonado, Isabela Viana, André de Pieri, Greg Zambon, Lucas Alves, Juliana Alcântara, and Luiz Simão. Those guys are much more than research assistants. We really work together for years, and we are still working together, and they really cover different parts of this research that I've been presenting here. Our book on stolen cars is almost ready, and we've been working on these issues last years. So it's really a pleasure to be here and to share those things with you. Thank you very much.